right or wrong, the bottom line is that the director has to please themselves. They've got to feel good about the show that they're putting on and the vibe that they're getting. My approach with Dallas Brass has always been, I want it to be sincere. I want it to be honest. I want it to be educational. I want it to be informative. I want it to be personable. I want a little bit of humor, but I don't want the humor to be so much that it's like, we come off like we're trying to be a bunch of comedians. So, everybody has to find their own balance of what they feel is really expresses who they are.
You are listening to the Music Ed Mentor podcast, where we teach music educators how to build, manage, and grow thriving school music programs and have long and happy careers. Welcome to episode 10 of the Music Ed Mentor podcast. I am your host, Elisa Jones. You can follow my music education blog at professionalmusiceducator.com or find me on Facebook at Professional Music Educator with Elisa Jones. I am so thrilled this episode to be joined by the founder and director of the Dallas Brass, Michael Levine. I met Michael last spring when the Dallas Brass came to my town to perform, and it was hands down one of the best live instrumental shows I've ever seen. The audience laughed, cried, and they brought down the house at the end. I knew then that I had to get Michael on our show to share his secret sauce for creating a performance that your audience will never forget. So that's right. We are talking this episode all about showmanship. What does that mean for us as directors of students from ages 6 to 18 and older who may or may not have stands and instruments in their faces, or who maybe can't move around on the stage like you'd expect? What elements can we incorporate above and beyond our repertoire selections to craft an experience for our audience? And why is showmanship important at all when our primary focus is and should be on our students' educational experience? What is it really all about? Well, Michael helps us answer all of these questions and more, so get ready to glean some awesome ideas that you will want to incorporate in your very next show-stopping performance. And speaking of selecting repertoire, this podcast is brought to you by Alfred Music, the leader in educational print music publishing. Looking for repertoire for your upcoming concerts? Be sure to visit alfred.com. Without further ado, here's my interview with Michael.
Okay, I'm Michael Levine, and I am the founder and director of the Dallas Brass, an ensemble that's been touring the country and touring the world for over 30 years now. And I'm a trombone player myself, and started out in school band, like most band directors and most of us in the music world. We got our start in school band, and not only was I involved in school band, but I was also involved in theater in high school. And that actually connects very much to this whole topic that we're talking about today, as far as presentation and showmanship and programming and that sort of thing. After high school, I went to the University of Minnesota, then went on to the Juilliard School, where I got my degree, and played in the symphony orchestra in Jerusalem for 4 years before coming back to the States, moving to Dallas, and starting the Dallas Brass. And that's, like I say, it's been over 30 years now. So that's kind of my life story in a nutshell.
Love it. So today we just really want to talk about, what can we do as school music teachers to really take our program to that next level? Most of us know, kind of what we have to do to check those main boxes for performances, but how can we go beyond that to create something as spectacular as the Dallas Brass, which is a performance that, if you've ever seen them, just is over the top, memorable, enjoyable for everybody in the audience, regardless of age or background or anything like that. So what are some tips you can give us as far as and how do we select the flow of the program and all that kind of stuff?
Right. Well, this is my all-time favorite subject. So I'm certainly in my element here talking about this. And it's something, like I said, that for me, just to give you a little bit more background, it really does go back to my experience in theater in high school, because I was in the band and I was in the drama department, and I was always sort of like comparing the two. And and realizing that when I was in the band, it seemed so one-dimensional. I mean, I loved it, no question about it. But we're sitting there playing the music, and that's kind of where it ended. Whereas in the theater, we had the lights and the sets and the costumes and the props and the choreography and the story and the acting and if of course if it was a musical, you had singing and you had dancing, and it's like you had all these elements of showmanship that were missing in the band concert, when all of a sudden you've got 70 or 80 people sitting there in front of music stands with instruments on their faces, and it just seemed so flat to me. And so I kind of took this with me over the years as I pursued my career, and it really played a big part in developing the Dallas Brass, because I wanted to connect with people. I wanted to do more than just sit and play. And I think connecting is the key word. I mean, that's really the big picture here. And connecting nowadays is different than connecting back, in 1917 or 1817 or 1617, or I think that we need to do. People expect more. They expect more. We live in a visual world, and kids grow up with YouTube and the internet and television, and we do live in a visual world, and so I think the more we can uh, incorporate some of these things into what we do, is especially as instrumentalists. Choir is a little different story, but I alluded to this a second ago, but the fact is we have certain limitations as instrumentalists, particularly wind players. Number one, we have a horn on our face. Number two, we're reading music, so we have a music stand. We don't have the benefit of the human voice, which people really can relate to. I mean, I've always said if you line up the 10 greatest trumpet players in the world and have them play one after another side by side, 99.99% of the population will not be able to tell the difference. But if you line up 10 singers, especially if not, maybe not opera singers, but 10 pop singers or jazz singers, everyone will know the difference, because the human voice is so unique and distinct. So that's something that the public relates to. They recognize a singer. They don't recognize a trumpet player unless maybe they are a trumpet player. And then the other thing is we don't have words. So that, again, the public doesn't relate quite as much to instrumental music as they do to vocal music, because they want to hear those words. They want to hear the story and so forth. And then as wind players, we tend to sit still, because we're taught that in order to produce the correct sound and have the correct embouchure and everything to have everything in order, that we need to sit very still and operate these instruments, and especially with brass, not as much with woodwinds, and definitely not as much with strings and keyboard and percussion. And if you picture a pianist or a cellist and a violinist, and they're moving and they're emoting, and it's part of what's stimulating about watching a performance of strings and other instruments. So we have to keep these things in mind, that these are things that we have to compensate for, these limitations when we perform. The bottom line is the audience wants to see the performers enjoying what they're doing. They want to see them engaged and having fun. And a lot of this comes from the visual piece so far.
Well, and I think we're really fortunate today that there are like some really bigger performing groups that are instrumentalists. Like you've heard of the two cellos or the piano guys, or
Terrific.
So they're kind of pushing that boundary. But yeah, how do you do that with a horn in your face?
Yeah. Well, and that's what my great challenge was with Dallas Brass, and it's different with a small ensemble than it is for a large ensemble too. And I'll get more into that in a few minutes. But with a small ensemble, one of the big pieces for Dallas Brass is that we memorize most of our music.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, it frees us up from the music stand, and it enables us to move around more, and our eye contact is focused on the audience. Now, that is not practical for a school band to be memorizing their music. So I
Right.
don't want to make people think, oh, well, that's easy for you to say, but that's not something that we're going to do. Uh, but so what I've basically come up with is what I call the 10 essential elements of showmanship. And repertoire is definitely one of them. If you want, I could go ahead and address that first. I think of it more in terms of the variety.
Sure.
That when you perform, that having variety is, as they say, variety is the spice of life. And in this day and age, especially, the more styles that you can include, I think the better. Mix light pieces with heavier pieces, familiar and unfamiliar, long and short, fast and slow, loud and soft, different grooves. Um, think in terms of different moods and emotions. And the more I think that you can offer your audience to keep it changing and to keep that sense of variety, I think that it will serve you well, and you'll reach more people with more varied tastes, and that's definitely something that I've done with Dallas Brass over the years. We try to have a little bit of a lot of things, almost like a musical buffet, if you will.
Oh, that's a good visual.
So, so I think that's really important. I've read a lot about John Philip Sousa over the years, and in fact, during this podcast, I have a few quotes I've put down on paper here that I'd like to include, and one of them that says that Sousa was all about showmanship. I mean, there's no question about it. And this was over 100 years ago, before we had YouTube and TV and all that. But Sousa was totally aware of the importance of it. And Paul Byerly, who's one of the great Sousa uh, experts, if you will, has written several books. He says regarding this, he says, Sousa slighted no musical form, believing that the secret of success of nearly any type of music lay in its treatment. Everything was played to perfection with little regard to its so-called musical importance. So whether he was playing a march or he was playing show tunes or he was playing opera, he treated everything as if it were important and quality. And so often I think we tend to judge, is this good music or is it not good music? And well, it depends who the listener is. I grew up with my mom and dad, and every Saturday night we were watching Lawrence Welk. Some people think, oh, that's hokey and that's a bunch of baloney, but for certain generation, I still watch Lawrence Welk, to be honest with you. His musicians are phenomenal. The arrangements are incredible. And he has a sense of showmanship. Of course, he's got the singing and the dancing. And I mean, they got the whole thing going there. But
Hmm.
um, so it depends who the music's for. I think the musical snobbery is something that I try to avoid, that this is good music and this isn't good music. I'm more concerned about whatever music it is, that it's played well
Well,
and that
is
we do
is there a
justice.
way for us to balance, those pieces of significance, let's say, with ones that are audience pleasers, or can should we be striving to find pieces that are both significant and please an audience, or how do we kind of balance that?
Well, and that the magic word is balance. If whatever, I'm not sure when you say significant, like what are you referring to? More like classical music or
Well, I was just thinking about that Sousa quote you just read. I've
uh,
right now I'm in the midst of planning four separate programs. So I have like a K-1-2 program in October that I'm planning, and a Veterans Day program that I'm planning, and a community band performance that I'm planning, and a Christmas program that I'm planning. And for example, with the community band one, I've selected Hobbits, which is the fifth movement of this Johann de Meyer symphony for band. I don't know if have you heard of that
or-
before.
uh-huh.
And so to me, like that's a musical piece of significance. It's one of the earlier band pieces, specifically for band, not orchestra. It has nothing to do with the movies, which have since become quite famous. But I want to do it because it's a piece of significance versus something that the audience is going to recognize, like Star Wars, right?
Right.
So, I want to be able to still justify it, and also for the band, but it is a very musical piece, and it will challenge some people, and it will help, teach our ensemble some things. So I think, how do we pick those pieces that the audience isn't going to know, may not necessarily love, but are valuable musical experiences nonetheless?
Well, I think you just answered your own question. I think that you find pieces that you feel personally are have value for all those other reasons you mentioned, that they'll help grow your band, and they're, however each person determines their significance is really what matters. But to me, the important thing is that you have the right proportion in the concert. And that's different for everybody too. Look, I've got my take on it, and other people might completely disagree, and that's fine. I'm just offering, my perspective. But I would balance that. I would only have one or two of those, and I would make sure that they didn't go on too long. Because I'm just it's I have to please myself and my balance as I produce my show,
Hmm.
and try to read the audience. And who is an audience? I mean, in an audience, you've got doctors and lawyers, and you've got blue collar workers, and you've got all ages. And in a Dallas Brass concert, we play for kids from ages 5 to 105. And so to please all those people with all those tastes and backgrounds and ages, and it is just a real challenge. And that's why, for me, I think some of the real keys are keeping pieces for Dallas Brass, keeping pieces on the shorter side. Not any piece is going to be more than maybe 5 minutes max. Um, and if I do a piece like that Johann de Meij piece, I might, right after it, I might do something familiar, go right into it,
Right.
so, because if you win your audience over, especially at the beginning, that's why the opener is so important. And you win them over, and you add some of these other elements that we're going to talk about, they'll go with you. I remember years ago, I had an incredible experience. I'm from Minnesota, and one summer, this is back in 1970 or something. I mean, it was a ways back. The Minnesota Orchestra did a summer concert. Leonard Slatkin was conducting, and they called it a rug concert, where they actually took all the seats out of the orchestra hall, and people brought rugs and pillows, and they sat like they were sitting on the lawn, except it was in orchestra hall. And at one point, he did a piece that was really out there. I don't remember who it was, what composer, but it was really, atonal and something pretty out outside the box. But he explained it to the audience, and he talked about it, and he gave a couple little demos of, listen for this and listen for that. He did like as I remember, maybe a 2 or 3 minute presentation of this piece without getting too. It wasn't like a lecture, and it wasn't too cerebral. It was just, he had the right. He said the right things, and he's a master. Leonard Slatkin he's along with Leonard Bernstein. I don't know. These guys are the mentors of communication with audiences. But that can make a difference too, in terms of allowing people to really connect. They should connect with every piece you play. Should never be an exception to that. And if it's presented in the right way, you can accomplish that. So,
I love
um,
that. That's great advice.
well, thanks. Well, can I jump back to the top of my list, and go through these 10 essential elements?
Yes, please, please.
Um, the fact is that the importance of the presentation, too often I think school band concerts just become sort of an exhibition of the kids' accomplishments, a display of their development. As they become more advanced, we play more difficult repertoire, and that's makes sense. But there just can be so much more to it. When I do clinics for kids, I talk about comparing it to a birthday cake. I mean, the bottom line, it's the music itself. We want to play well, and we want to play good music and play it on a high level. But that's like the cake itself. But until you frost that birthday cake, and you decorate it, and you put the candles on, and you light the candles, and that's when the magic happens. That's when it comes alive. And so I think of music, or a concert, performance, as being the same way, that we've got to have a good cake at the foundation, but we have to remember to frost it. So, and the kids get more out of it. It's more meaningful. It's more memorable to them. The band program the audience likes it more. The program becomes more visible, more valuable in the eyes of the administration and the parents and the community. And they start to realize that we can do something. We can create magic. We're not just demonstrating, okay, here's how we've improved.
Hmm.
It's so I think a lot of it, that it's just important to consider some of those things. Um, so getting into the 10 essential elements, the first one, and they're not in necessarily any order, but the first one I always enjoy talking about is excellence, because whatever we do, we have to approach it with excellence, whether it's the music itself or it's the whatever the frosting is that we put on top. We have to treat every aspect with the same care and consideration. Byerly says, people who attended Sousa band concerts left the hall knowing that they had been entertained. He played his way into the hearts of the masses by appealing to their tastes and by giving them liberal doses of classics, unabashedly mixed with stimulating march music, a little humor, and variety, variety, variety. Each program was originally conceived with something of interest to everyone. So that kind of gets back into that variety piece. But anyhow, so excellence is number one. Number two is fun. For over 30 years now, and what Dallas Brass has done, I figured well over 2,000 performances. The comment I get from audience members more than anything else is, "You guys look like you're having so much fun."
It's true.
I mean, what they're really saying is that they had fun watching us have fun, and and they want to smile, they want to chuckle, they want to enjoy themselves, and the fun doesn't have to come from comedy routines or doing anything outrageous. It can come from just smiling and being relaxed and exuding joy from the performers, being lighthearted. And, because they're not saying, "Hey, you guys tell really funny jokes, you're really good comedians." They're just saying that they enjoyed us and seeing us have a good time. So keeping that element, and that's a little trickier in a large ensemble when you've got, again, 80 kids on stage, and how do you convey that? And we'll talk more about that as we go. The next one was variety, and we've already talked about the variety. Pacing, to be accountable for every moment in the concert. Avoid or at least minimize dead time. There should always be something happening. Keep the show moving at a brisk pace. Maintain the energy. There's another quote from Sousa. "The curtain went up. Out came Sousa, who took one short bow, quickly stepped up onto the podium, and immediately the band began. Sousa would permit no pauses of over 20 to 30 seconds." Well, nowadays, that would probably be no pauses more than 5 to 10 seconds,
Yeah, attention spans these days. Am I right?
Be mindful of the concert length, leave them wanting more. If you've got more than one band on the concert, it may go a little bit longer, but make sure to keep the shifts between bands quick. Rehearse those shifts. Try to have something going on. You could have a small ensemble playing while these shifts are happening. The next one, this is one of the most important ones, communication. Good communication with the audience. It's just essential. It makes the concert more interesting. It's more informative. It's educational. It's more personable. But less is more. 60 seconds per talk is probably a good length. Depends on the quality of the material. And as the director, you might give the opening remarks for the concert, but then maybe involve the students. Have them do some introductions, but rehearse them, coach them, so they don't get up and, next we will play a song by Johann de Meyer, and we hope that you enjoy it. It's sort of like monotone, and they're reading off a script. They should rehearse it. They should memorize it. They could work with the drama coach and learn how to speak, do public speaking in an effective way. Now, you don't want to make it too intellectual or too much, facts and things like that. With Dallas Brass, we try to find things more of human interest, things to talk to the audience about. Tell stories. Make sure you have a good sound system, and that the students know how to talk into a microphone. I love when a kid holds a mic, or an adult. They're even worse. They'll hold the mic and they'll hold it down at waist level. It's like, put the mic up to your mouth. Hello.
Yeah, totally.
So this communication thing really like I said, it lays the groundwork for so much of what you can do in the show, as far as the repertoire and
Do you think it's essential to talk before every piece, or can you go straight from one piece to the next and then talk about the second piece afterward? Do you find that change in the pacing makes the audience more aware, or I don't know, what are your thoughts?
Absolutely. No, it's a great point, and I was actually gonna address that in a little bit as well on pacing. Um, in fact, you want to have to break up that pattern. You don't wanna have talk, play, talk, play, talk, play. You wanna change it up, and in Dallas Brass, we absolutely we're very conscious of having segues. We've had 3 in a row where we've talked before, now we're gonna have a segue, and then talk after it. So yeah, that's very important. Just mix it up. Let's talk about visual. Rule number one, make sure the parents can see their kid. I'm a back row kid. I'm a trombone player. And I remember my mom and dad come to the concerts and I'm sitting in the back and we're all on one level and they can't see me. For all they knew, I wasn't even there. And it's just like, and the kid wants their parents to see them, and the parents want to see their kids. And when we do Dallas Brass concerts, we invite high school and middle school bands to come up and stage and play a tune with us. And we have risers, and we have some. And I know this is not as practical for a concert band, I realize, but
Right.
what we do is we put up risers, so we have kids standing, and then we have kids standing on the floor, and then the front we have the kids seated. It's kind of like the what do they call it, the living Christmas tree,
Hmm.
where they and we have people on different levels so everybody can see everybody. And I don't know what the answer is for a standard concert band concert. When you go into the gym and the people are in the bleachers and they can look down and see their kids, that's terrific. But I don't know. I just don't. I wish I had the answer. Maybe putting up screens and having a bunch of cameras so we can project it. I don't know.
That's probably not too far off in the future,
Probably,
actually. And
yeah.
even just spacing the kids out a little bit. But, I took over this elementary music program after the lady had been there for, 15, 20 years, something really long like that. And they had done the Christmas program, the exact same music, the exact same way every time. And it was always held in the church, and everybody sat in the pews. And when it came time for one of the grades to sing, they would just stand up right in the pews and sing. And one of the things that I changed was I actually pulled in risers, and I made the kids come out of their rows and up on the risers. And we had some filler in between when the groups would switch around. But one of the comments I always got was, wow, we can actually see the kids. It makes such a
I know.
difference.
Oh, it's such a
And
difference.
I think we forget about that
I
visual
know.
element is really essential.
Well, and when you talk about the screens and that, of course, a lot of course, rock concerts have been doing it for years, and now, you know, uh, big concerts, Hollywood Bowl, they have big screens, and it's getting more popular. A lot of churches are set up that way with screens because they use them in their services. And with Dallas Brass has played a lot of churches where they'll have us projected as well. And it's up to each director to try to deal with that and figure it out in the best way they can. But yeah, it's a drag. I mean, it's great for the kids in the front row, but all the kids in the back, it's unfortunate. So
Actually,
anyhow,
I was just thinking, technology wise, how if I wanted to set that up, I would do it. And I think I would use Facebook live stream on my cell phone and have that being played on my computer, which is hooked up to a projector. And then all I'd need is somebody walk around with my cell phone and point it at kids. And that would
right.
totally work. I'm gonna try that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's really tricky with Dallas Brass concerts because we'll get camera. In fact, we did one and I forget down in Florida somewhere, and they had like 3 camera guys, and I was telling them they shouldn't do it because I said, you can't, it's impossible to follow in a Dallas Brass concert because the melody moves around and you're showing the trumpet who's playing a melody, and before you know it, the tuba has the melody and then the horn, and it jumps around so much that, they ended up putting the camera on people that are, blowing the condensation out of their instrument. And you
Hmm.
know what I mean? Or, because if you're going to do it right, you want to make sure that it's well thought out so that you're showing what is important at that moment in the music. I mean, there's a whole art form there. I mean, perhaps some of your listeners are familiar with, like, the Berlin Philharmonic now has a series that you can subscribe to, and you can watch hundreds of Berlin Philharmonic concerts on the internet. And of course, the camera work, I don't know if they've got 10, 12 cameras, but somebody has they sat down with the score and they mapped out every single shot. So it's an art form in and of itself if you take it to that level. But we're not talking about that right now. We're just talking about giving some of the back row kids a little bit more, you know, uh, of upfront time. So,
Right.
um, I think we can just learn a lot from marching bands. It's marching band. It's a visual experience. It's like half and half, half visual and half oral. And I think if we take 5% of what marching bands do and bring it to the concert stage, it would really serve us well. Just to have that visual mindset, that just to sit there and avoid having the stage be stagnant throughout the show. On lighter pieces, have sections stand up, like you were saying, or have soloists stand on feature spots. Inappropriate pieces. You may not want to do that in your Johann de Mai piece, but if it's lighter music, especially, it's conducive to that style of music. You look at the big bands with what they used to do with the horns swaying back and forth and people up and down, and I mean, it was showmanship 101. Incorporate some other simple choreography into the piece, or even a spot in the piece where it might be appropriate. Have the narrators work from either side of the stage. If you have a couple of narrators, don't always have them standing in the same place, so it doesn't get stagnant. Make sure the stage is well lit. I can't tell you how many band concerts I've been to, and the stage looks so dull, and it's like, man, it's just like it's got to be well lit. Um, Makes a huge difference. Use multimedia, like or you were talking about in a different way, but you can incorporate, you know, images or video or whatever.
Hmm.
I mean, and these are not new ideas. My gosh, people have been doing this stuff for years. You could invite a dancer to come in and dance a selection on the concert. You decorate the stage, make it look festive. I mean, all these visual things that you can do to 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 offset that typical environment of just the band sitting and being sort of stagnant.
Right.
And that leads me right into the next topic, which is stage presence. Knowing how to present oneself on stage is it's what's theater is all about. And in a symphony orchestra and a concert band, it's typically not considered other than having good posture. One time I remember I was out at Tanglewood, where the Boston Symphony summer home is, and this is probably 15 years ago. Marvin Hamlish was the guest conductor. And I walked into this rehearsal right in time for Marvin to catch Marvin Hamlish lecturing the Boston Symphony and on a stage presence. And when they stand up after the end of the piece, that they should look at the audience and they should smile, and in whatever piece he was doing, he wanted them to move a little bit, and he was working with them, and it was so interesting. I mean, here he's talking to the greatest musicians in the world, but he's talking to them about these basic elements of showmanship, which symphony orchestras traditionally, they don't think that way. It's like, my job is to sit here and play great, and that's where it ends. But that is changing. That's changing. Orchestras are realizing that they better, get with the times as well. But it starts with good posture. Of course, that's going to not only benefit it. Not only does it look good, but it's going to benefit the kids playing. And every director uh, emphasizes posture. Eye contact. Uh, it's with a large ensemble. I think most important, eye contact with the conductor, of course. But the audience sees that. They can see that the kids are looking up. They notice that. But especially when the group is standing at the end of the concert or at the end of the piece, to stand, face the audience, and look at the audience. Don't be looking down at your music stand or the floor or your instrument. Look at the audience, and you can even look to the left, look to the right, and be present, and adding a smile to that too. Sometimes you see a band stand up and they all have these blank looks on their faces, like they're just bored or they're whatever. I mean, it doesn't make sense. I mean,
Yeah, I think we can all visualize that. We've all seen it.
yeah. So practice it. Get the kids to stand immediately, stand with energy, look straight out. Again, scan the audience, nice smile, and keep your attention on that audience while they're applauding. And it's not until the conductor gives the cue to release that, okay, boom, okay, now we can sit back down. But that's so powerful. We're there for the audience. There's a great Louis Armstrong quote that I love, that he says, "My life is my music, but the music ain't worth nothing if you can't lay it on the public. Live for that audience, because what you're there for is to please the people."
Yeah,
So I don't
agreed.
care if it's a fifth grade band or a high school band or a professional band. When you get on stage, you are no longer a music student. You are a performer. You're putting on a show. You're entertaining people, and and you got to go into that mode. If you're in a play in high school or any level, it's not a it's not a drama exhibition. I mean, you're in a play, and you're you know what I mean. It doesn't matter if it's Broadway or if it's fifth grade. It's theater. So I don't mean to belabor that point, but I just think it's a mindset that we need to think about. So
Well, and as music educators, it's to our own advantage to connect with that audience because that audience, those are the people who are going to advocate for us. Those are the people who are going to give us money and
yep,
funding. Those are the people who are going to want us to stay as their school music teacher instead of complaining about us to the principal. You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
it's actually in our best interest to have that strong relationship with our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I listened to one of your previous podcasts, the last one. I forget the gentleman's name that you,
Bruce.
uh, yeah, and you talked a lot about that, and with the administration, and of course, if you're putting on a great performance, and the audiences, you're getting big crowds, and they're loving it, and the kids are happy. I mean, people are going to pick up on all that. It's not just okay. It's another band concert, but it's something. It's a real event. So. Body language is another piece I wanted to mention as far as the stage presence. Being expressive physically, and less is more, but the subtle movement that correlates with the music itself. I mean, for example, you watch a Dixieland band, and it's not going to look the same as a symphony orchestra playing, um, whatever they play. It's any classical piece. If it's a rock band, they've got a certain vibe about them, jazz and to feel the groove. If you're playing a ballad, a very soft ballad, you're not going to be bouncing all over the place. But on the other hand, if you're playing When the Saints Go Marching In, you can bounce around. And in Dallas Brass, when you have a solo, the horn goes up just slightly, or maybe you step forward a little bit. But I think to allow kids to be a little bit more expressive when they play, not only as a concert band, but just even individually. Do not feel like they have to stand there and be a statue. And picture a guy, somebody with a guitar, or like I say, even a cellist or a pianist or um, a drummer. So I think that that's something too that the audience will relate to. They want to see some life on stage. So
See,
um,
that's funny that you mentioned that because I'm just remembering back when I was in college, I was in like not really a show choir, but the chamber choir, right? So the smaller, high quality performance vocal group. And we actually were invited to the Utah Music Educators Association conference to perform
uh-huh.
as one of the showpiece groups. And we were invited to be like in this clinic, right? And this choral director was using us as the example. And
Okay.
several of us were really emoting by, smiling or sometimes tilting our head or, raising our eyebrows at some certain points. And this choral person said that we shouldn't do that, actually. And it was like, no, why would you tilt your head? You're changing your airstream. You don't need to raise your eyebrows up when you're singing up on a line. And I was like, here I am majoring in music education, thinking about how I'm going to be teaching choir and thinking, well, what am I going to say to my students when they, tilt their head at a meaningful part of the music? So I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think that different strokes for different folks. I mean, there's no right or wrong. Everybody's got their own style. And that's why this whole conversation today is really, it's just a matter of what works for you. I mean, I hope that I'm giving some ideas of things that people might try if they're inclined to do so. But, the flip side of that is, there was a man that I ran into a guy a number of years ago who was doing a clinic at a state conference, and he was a master, and he had those kids emoting visually. I mean, if you had a video and you turned the sound down, you would be moved by this performance just watching it. And it wasn't too much. It wasn't like a show choir, but he got them doing what you're talking about, feeling the music. And yes, less is more. I've said that several times, because if it goes too far, it can almost seem contrived. Um, but I think it's extremely important. I'm from the other school, so Oh yeah, like even when the kids stand at the end of the piece, that they all stand together. I mean, not sort of scattered little here and there, and it doesn't have to be military, but it needs to be somewhat together. And when they sit and when they if they take a bow, we have the bands take a bow with Dallas Brass, and we rehearse the bow. We rehearse it like 3 or 4 times. And even when they raise their instruments, again, it doesn't have to be like marching band or military like, but all the instruments come up absolutely together, and you don't clank any music stands. It's like that's so powerful. The conductor gets up in front and goes, "Zoop," and the horns come up, and it's like, whoa. I mean, I got goosebumps right now just thinking about it. But these are things that will pull your audience in. And they exude pride. It tells the audience that you really care and that your kids care, and then the audience will care as well. Okay, I got to jump on to the next one, number 8, personable. This is really important for the director to be personable, um, to be relaxed, friendly, natural, not stiff. I mean, your job is to make the audience feel comfortable and welcome. You're like the talk show host, to show enthusiasm and passion, a little humor or lightheartedness. But just mostly, I think the most important word is to be natural, be relaxed and natural. Um,
So
and
how can we develop that if that's really hard for us? We get up in front of an audience when you put a microphone in our hand, and all of a sudden, all the jokes we were making in our junior high choir practice earlier are gone, and we're nervous. Do you have any tips for how to be natural like that?
hmm,
Sorry.
I guess maybe video. I'm just gonna fly off. I just go off the top of my head here. Maybe videotape yourself, audio tape yourself, practice in front of a video camera. Just talk as if you're my high school drama director, who I'm still in touch with. He's still one of my lifetime mentors. He said, just talk like you're talking to somebody in their living room. Just you're just sitting around, and there's like if you had 5 people in your audience and you were in the band room doing a performance for 5 people, you would talk a different way. You would just talk very naturally, like you and I are talking right now. But all of a sudden, you get in this big crowd, and you feel like all of a sudden you have to change your tone, and you've got to address this massive crowd. And I think that makes people stiffen up a little bit too. So maybe imagine that you're just talking to the front row, and you're just having a conversation.
Yeah, that's good.
So those are and like I say, videotaping and audio taping are certainly can be valuable, just like they are for uh, performing itself. And the kids should do that too, because I think it's great to have the students do the narration, but they've got to do it well. Like we talked about earlier, they can't just get up there and read and speak in a monotone voice. And so surprise. Next topic. Do something unexpected. Be unpredictable. This gets back into what you said about having a segue. Um, it keeps the audience alert. They don't know what's coming next, and it doesn't have to be outrageous. People will expect everyone to just sit in one place for the entire concert, and then if you change it up and you do a piece and you got somebody in the audience or you've got some motion, that's going to keep them visually alert, keep them guessing. Play a piece that's not on the program. If you have a printed program, purposely put in something that you planned, but you didn't print it, because it sort of gives the message that there's a sense of spontaneity.
Hmm.
And I think that's a really valuable one right there. Humor and surprise work well together, since many funny things are funny because they're unexpected. Just a little touch of humor can go a long way. You can have, like I say, have people play from different places in the auditorium, incorporate singing, props, costumes. You know, Again, whatever is appropriate for that kind of concert. Like you were telling me the other day about a wonderful program. You should talk about that, or maybe you have in another podcast. But the one that you were telling me about, I was like in awe of what you were saying. That was terrific.
Oh shucks, I'll have to add that to the end of the podcast, maybe.
Okay. But yeah, and if you're doing a holiday concert, obviously that is really conducive to doing a lot of these other things, or a pops concert. But I maintain that you could take some of these elements and incorporate them into there's no concert that's too serious to not have elements of showmanship. It all just has to be done within good taste, and that's up to the director. That's the job of the director. That's why they call the person a director. Um, okay, the last one is passion. Is showing the audience how much you care, and it's allowing the kids and the audience to see how much you love music and that you're not afraid to show it. And if you have passion, your kids will have passion and they'll play their hearts out. Um, and every conductor I've had all my life that I think back on with such the fondest memories are the ones that were passionate and they exuded that love. And there was nothing, it wasn't academic and it wasn't cerebral and it wasn't, business-like. It was when it came right down to it, it was the passion of the music. So I think when you add that into the mix, you've got something, really awesome. I I have one little story I just want to tell, if I may.
Sure.
When I was in high school, my I had an okay high school band, but I had heard about another band in the next community over, and I went to their Pops concert, and it changed my life because I saw all these things I've talked about. I saw them in action with a high school band. This wasn't a professional band. And of course, it was a Pops concert, but they had everything that we've talked about times 10. I mean, even the program was printed on really nice paper. I mean, when I walked in the auditorium, the curtain was closed and the band started playing. And then the curtain opened as the band played the opening number, and they had a marquee with flashing lights, and coming down, and they had singing and dancing and skits, and they just really, really did an amazing production. And what that told me was that these things can be done by high school kids. I mean, high school kids, let me take that back, middle school or even elementary school kids.
Hmm.
Yeah, kids. They're the most creative people in the world, so
That's true.
and it can be done by a concert band or an orchestra. There's so many things that you could consider that could really add a tremendous amount to bring that concert to life. So that concert really changed my life. And I've talked to a lot of directors over the years, and there are pockets here and there around the country where people are putting on some pretty impressive productions. And it doesn't have to be a production, only when it's appropriate. I hope I didn't talk too much.
No, 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 you're great. That's the whole point of this thing is to get you to talk and share your expertise. I mean, the reason I wanted to have you on is because I saw the Dallas Brass and just loved what you did. And I think you've given us all some really great tips and things to think about and ways that we can, take our performance to the next level. I think that it can make a lot of us really uncomfortable, especially if we grew up in that very stoic stage performing era to, be able to switch things up. I know I'm thinking right now of, my community band concert that we're going to start rehearsing music for in the next couple weeks, and the performance is in December, and I'm really happy with the pieces that I've picked. So now I'm just thinking already, okay, how can we take each one to the next level? So you've really got me at least thinking about that, and I'm sure our listeners are all going to really appreciate that as well.
Well, I hope so. With a community band, it's maybe one notch more challenging because they're a little more conservative as far as trying things. But the magic phrase is less is more, and a little less is more, and a little goes a long way, especially in a band concert because people don't expect anything. They
Right.
don't. You know what? If you said to me, give me one word to summarize the whole thing, I'd say fun.
Yeah.
It's okay to have fun. You can still play music, good music, and on a high level, and it can still be fun.
Well, and I was always taught, that as musicians, it's our job to project the emotion of the piece to the
Uh-huh.
audience. And if
Sure.
if if we can do that with something that's very sobering and heart-wrenching, and then, quickly turn it around to something that's very lively and active, we're educating the emotions of ourselves, our
Yeah, right.
students, and the whole audience.
Yeah. And maybe that's an even better word. I mean, it's just and I started out with talking about connecting. So maybe fun is part of connecting. So maybe the ultimate word isn't fun. Maybe it's connect.
So would you be willing to let me have your 10 points of
Oh,
showmanship and to create a
absolutely.
download for everybody?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you
Yep.
so much.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you, Michael, coming on and
Oh, thank
talking to
you.
us about showmanship and really taking our performances to the next level. And I can't wait to apply it myself in these performances I have coming up. And I'm sure this will be super useful to all the music educators listening as well.
I hope so. If anyone, do you mind if I give my email address if anyone wants to ask me any questions or
No,
wants to share anything like that?
please do.
Yeah, it's just simply mike@dallasbrass.com.
Okay. And I will have links to the Dallas Brass Facebook page and website and Harmony Bridge as well, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, great.
And we'll have to come back. You should know to all of our listeners that Michael has created a way for students to get out in the community and perform and connect on this other level and really provide musical performance as a service to people in the community. And we talked about maybe giving a little spiel about it in this episode, but I think we're going to end up having to just do an entire
Yeah,
separate episode about Harmony Bridge, don't you think?
I would love that. I would really enjoy that because that takes all this to even another level. So
Thank you again, Michael, for coming on today.
thanks for the opportunity.
I know this episode was a little bit longer than we normally enjoy, but there was so much good stuff in there, I hated to cut it. I hope you'll agree that Michael has given us some fantastic ideas for how to create our own outstanding performances. Don't forget to check out the show notes for this episode to grab the Showmanship cheat sheet, as well as to learn more about the Dallas Brass, Harmony Bridge, and this episode's sponsors, Alfred.com and Smart Music. These sponsors truly have your music program's best interests in mind, which is why their websites are both packed with resources to help you. If you don't already subscribe to the smartmusic.com blog, please do. You will not regret it. Each article is written by a music educator expert like you. As always, please share this podcast with your like-minded, musically educated friends. Subscribe, rate, and enjoy. Keep doing all the awesome stuff you do and hang in there. Remember that what you do every day is important. Every day. You make a difference. So until next time, keep teaching on.